Thought Spider-Man would be interesting because it's like the big new release that's coming up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I guess in our next episode, we'll probably be talking about the movie itself.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear now that like all the previous characters seem to have somewhat more than just a minor role or cameo in these films. I don't know if all the like villains will get equal screen time, but it does seem like a couple of them are gonna play like a pretty big role in explaining the whole universe and everything.
I wonder about that, though, because, I mean, having too many villains was something that sunk both Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 and also The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, but also because those villains were super lame.
Well, yeah, but I mean, how far into a character can you really go?
I don't think they're going to do any explanation of the characters because we've already explained them.
I suppose.
I think they're just going to try and show up and beat up Spider-Man.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about that, though. I feel like Spider-Man's always better when there's like a singular villain for him to sort of reflect against, you know? Like Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi's one, is so good because you see the kind of warped side of Peter's intelligence in Doc Ock.
But I don't think any of the Sinister Six are going to be like the main villain. I think the main villain might be Doctor Strange.
Really? I mean, as like an anti-hero, you mean?
Sort of, because clearly whatever Spider-Man is doing is going against his wishes.
Although the trailer makes it seem like Doctor Strange is very quick to help him out with this whole... like
maybe when it gets out of hand. And that's going to lead into the Doctor Strange sequel about the multiverse and Scarlet Witch.
Right.
So this whole like alternate reality storyline I don't think is over. I think it's just going to start brand new with this one. And all the villains popping up is just going to show how all the universi, I guess, are connected.
I feel like it's a pretty easy hit for them unless something goes catastrophically wrong. But coming out of that, do you want to start the show?
Welcome to the Extra Buttery podcast. It's a show about movies, TV, anything with a story and actors on a screen, really. Join Jason Chan and Robert Snow's free-flowing conversation with deep dives into characters and plot with the occasional salty opinion. So get your popcorn, I got mine right here. Let's start the show!
Welcome to the 102nd episode of the Extra Buttery podcast. This week's episode, we're talking about House of Gucci, we're talking Spencer, The Harder They Fall, and if we have some time, Hawkeye, the newest MCU series on Disney+. So let's just get right down to the brass tacks.
House of Gucci, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, I sadly have not seen this yet. So this is going to be one of those episodes where we kind of like go back and forth. We are like, you've seen something, I've seen something kind of thing.
Gucci needs new blood.
It's time to take out the trash.
They're my family.
So am I.
You picked a real firecracker.
She's a handful.
Bravo.
Do you feel I'm letting Ridley Scott down by having not seen either of his two releases this fall?
Maybe for the last duo, but I feel like you're letting Jared Leto down
Okay.
by not watching House of Gucci, because clearly he put in a lot of effort into this role. And surely by now you've heard what people have said about his performance, right?
Well, yeah, I've heard that he is to House of Gucci what Ben Affleck is to The Last Duel.
Yes, yes, very
but
much.
I'm very confused because I've seen lots of trailers for the House of Gucci over the past year or so, and I don't know why they just didn't cast Peter Stormare as Jared Leto's character because it looks like they've buried him in so many prosthetics and makeup effects to make him look essentially like Peter Stormare.
But Stormare can't act like Jared Leto.
Can't he? I mean, I feel like
no way, no.
What I've seen in the trailers makes it look like you could very easily just drop Stormare right in there.
No, like Jared Leto goes beyond that. Stormare's like a pretty strange guy, right?
Yeah, but that's what the vibe that Leto's given off that I've seen.
Oh, okay. Well, wait till you see it, because Jared Leto, I mean, he hams it up a lot. So a lot of people have criticized him for his performance. They're like, kind of like, what the hell is this? And they're right. He is very much in a different movie than everyone else, it seems. But I don't think that's his fault. I think in both The Last Duo and House of Gucci, Ridley Scott has a problem with maintaining a consistent tone sometimes. And so in House of Gucci, it's way more apparent because Jared Leto just sticks out. But I will also say that Jared Leto, without him and that performance, House of Gucci is not as interesting as a film.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think Jared Leto did a bad job. I just think, kind of like with Joker, he did a very different interpretation of what it was supposed to be. And then the difference is this time it works because he is legitimately hilarious. I don't think Stonemaier can be as funny or as goofy as Jared Leto in this movie.
Okay.
The accent he puts on, it's like beyond video game. Like, it's beyond caricature Italian accents. Not only does he have like the intonations down, the rhythm he speaks with, it's just so cartoony. It's hilarious. And I honestly wish we got more of him and less of everyone else. Although everyone else was quite good.
Okay. High praise for Leto.
I don't see. Okay, see. That's the thing. I don't know if it's praise because he was clearly in a different movie.
Right.
Like he was not part of the group, so to speak.
Okay.
And I don't know if he stood out because of his acting. Well, he did. But I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But he definitely made the film more interesting. As a whole, the film, in my opinion, still isn't great.
Okay. Well, then, speaking of the rest of the film, then, do you want to do a quick plot summary?
Oh, okay, sure. House of Gucci. So this film has actually been in like development for a very long time, and it's basically a biographical movie about the Gucci brand. So Lady Gaga is Patrizia Reggiani. Depending on which POV you come from, she's either like a really capable businesswoman or a gold digger. Anyway, she falls in love, or seduces, I should say, Maurizio Gucci, who is the heir to the Gucci brand, except he has zero interest in the Gucci business. It's only when he realizes like how big the business is and how much money there is, and also a little prodding from Lady Gaga, does he really get involved. And the Gucci brand, when we meet them, are controlled by two brothers, Jeremy Irons as Rodolfo Gucci and Al Pacino as Aldo Gucci. Jared Leto plays Pablo Gucci, who would be Aldo Gucci's son. So Adam Driver's Maurizio and Jared Leto's Pablo are cousins. And so this follows the real story. And I had no idea this was actually like what happened. I thought the movie had sort of dramatized certain events. But in real life, Maurizio Gucci was murdered by a hitman hired by his ex-wife, Patrizia. And it's sort of this story about how this brand became huge, family betrayal. It's a drama / thriller, kind of funny at times, and we'll get to like the inconsistent tone later. Yeah, it talks about the story of the rise and fall of Gucci, basically.
Right. And I mean, it's interesting enough that Ridley Scott managed to get both of these movies out within like a month, maybe 6 weeks of each other.
He's like a workhorse, eh?
I know, and he has no plans of slowing down from what I've heard. But it sounds like like you were saying, the tone is a little bit all over the place. Do you think maybe his kind of manic pace over the past, just his working pace, not necessarily the pace of the movie, do you think his output maybe made it difficult for him to make these movies work better on their own?
Maybe. But I think it's more that sometimes he doesn't get the actors to buy in on one particular vision.
Right.
I think that's part of the problem. And then like I think it works in his favor sometimes when like everyone knows what they're doing and like a very like tight, cohesive product comes out. But there are often times where I think he just trusts the actors to know their craft and to do what they should be doing. And I don't know if he provides a lot of direction for his actors. But I've noticed that definitely with the last duo in this movie, that different actors seem to be different things and have different takes on what the overall tone of the movie should be. So, for example, Jared Leto, he plays this like a comedy, like almost like an Adam McKay type comedy, where it's kind of exaggerated and there's certain caricatures, right?
Oh, God. Okay.
Adam Driver comes in super serious. He's a very interesting actor. Like, he can sit there and look very interesting just by not doing anything at all, but he plays it pretty straight. He's not a man. He's a man of few words. Kind of puts on this image that he's very capable, but we all know, as the movie shows, he's not that capable. Lady Gaga does like an extension of her role in the movie she was in before that just escaped my mind.
A Star is Born?
Yeah, Star is Born. Okay, where she's fully into it. She's like this strong female character, I think, and she has like a very clear idea what she wants, and she's kind of ruthless in how she gets it. She's very good, but she plays it almost like more of a high energy drama rather than slow and sort of deep, slow burn that Adam Driver does.
Right.
And then Al Pacino does his Al Pacino thing. He like screams a little bit sometimes in a weird Italian accent. Could have used more, could have used less. Jeremy Irons doesn't even bother putting on an Italian accent. I think he just doesn't care, or he's incapable of it. Salma Hayek is clearly incapable of doing it. She just sounds like she does normally.
Right.
I think she tries to put on an Italian accent, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I saw something where like she was talking about a scene in like a spa or something that she was doing with Lady Gaga, and she was worried that like, you know, just the nature of the mud was going to be a little bit too revealing for her in this particular scene, but yet she had all this crew like around her kind of leering at her a little bit because they had all these, you know, all the different people, and they had the cameras pointed in her direction and everything. But apparently Ridley Scott was just like, nope, let's just roll it. Let's keep going. Let's barrel on through, you know?
Yeah, that's how he works. Yeah. Which I appreciate. But again, that kind of goes to show that like as an actor with him, you need to know your stuff right away. Like he's not waiting for you.
Yeah. And there's been other like hilarious things coming out during the press tour for both Last Duel and this movie where, you know, people will bring up, you know, they'll try to ask him a question about historical accuracy in either movie, and he'll kind of he'll just flip out. He'll be like, I don't care about this. It's not important. You know, you're focusing on the wrong thing if you're questioning that aspect of it. And I mean, that makes sense. You go back to something like Gladiator or something like that. I mean, at the end of the day, Gladiator is an incredibly involving, exciting movie to watch. Not because it's following the actual history all that closely. So do you think that this would actually be up for any awards, or is it a little bit too messy to kind of latch on with the Academy?
The film itself probably won't, but the performances will, for sure. Regardless of what you think of Jared Leto, I think at some point he will get awards consideration. And I'm not talking like, oh, he's so bad he's going to win a Razzie. But I think there is a legitimate case to be made that he actually did a really good job.
Huh. Okay.
So, like, that's why I kind of wanted you to see this, because I wanted your take on it. Because he really, like, I've never seen a film where an actor stands out so much, but also makes you, like, not know how to feel about it.
I'm trying to think now, the last example of that. Well, I mean, we could get into that, actually, in the movie we'll talk about next, Spencer, but
okay, yes, I can't wait to hear this. But overall, back to your point, I think Ridley Scott's versatile. I love him. He's like one of my top fives. It's just his work generally is good. There's like very few like awful movies. I'd almost argue that there's none, but it's not as great as, you know, his past films have been. And I think in a different set of hands, I think House of Gucci could be a lot more vibrant, a lot more energetic. It seems to not know how to crescendo or peak and come down. At some point near the end of the movie, you really wonder how Ridley Scott's going to end this, because scene after scene, it's just Adam Driver and Lady Gaga bickering, and they move sort of inch forward as the story progresses. But there's no like big wow moment where like distinctly tells you something is going to happen.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? And I'm not the first person to point this out, but there was another situation recently where he made all the money in the world about the Getty family and the famous abduction of, what was it, John Paul Getty III?
Yeah.
And that was infamously the one where they had previously shot a whole bunch of footage with Kevin Spacey in one of the main roles, and had to replace him due to the criminal investigations and all of that.
But I'm glad you mentioned that movie because they're very similar.
Well, yeah, and that's the total vibe I got when I saw the marketing originally for House of Gucci. Was like, oh yeah, he's doing another one of these things about like a powerful family in Italy, or in Europe, that part of the world, with, you know, money corrupting things, and a group of people who on the surface are a family but really aren't super cozy with each other.
Exactly.
And a movie that kind of fades from your memory a little bit not long after you watch it. I wonder if that's the case with House of Gucci.
I find that with The Last Duel already, so I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, just the acting, I think. Lady Gaga's great in it. She a little over the top for my liking, but I think it's just the way they had written her character. I think Adam Driver's incredible. He always is. And Jared Leto, that's the one I'm looking forward to most. I really wonder how the award circuit's going to treat him. And I wonder what you think too, Rob, so go out and see it.
Yeah, I've got to have like basically a mini Ridley Scott film festival in the next couple of weeks.
My only tip when watching that film, wear something comfortable. It feels like a very long movie.
Noted. Well, I mean, all the more reason for me to see it in like streaming in the next week or two whenever it hits home release.
Right. Oh, by the way, before we go on to the movie, did you see Spencer in theaters?
I did. Yep.
Okay, so like kind of when we were still kind of just coming out of the pandemic, I went to see a movie and I noticed that there are very, very few commercials, almost none.
Huh.
But then I went to see House of Gucci and I had like the usual 20 minutes of car commercials.
Oh, yeah. I counted 6 in front of the screening of Spencer. 6.
Oh, it's okay. So you got that too?
I got like 5 different brands, but Ford appeared twice. So for a total of 6.
Oh my God. Isn't that awful, man?
Yeah.
I thought, you know, the pandemic was like, okay, they're cutting back on advertising. I guess they're not running ads anymore. This is great.
Yeah.
Now we're coming back out of it and the ads are back. Now I remember why going to theater irked me sometimes.
It was legitimately getting on my nerves. I was like, how many more different brands do we see here? And
okay, sorry about that tangent, but it was just like a going back to movies experience that I had, and I don't know if anyone else had that too.
Well, yeah, and like especially if you're, you know, trying to choose which movie to watch based on the runtime, and you're like, okay, I got, you know, maybe an ad 2.5 hours is a bit too long, but 2 hours is more my thing. If you end up with such a huge commercial package on the front, you're like, oh my God, I'm getting out at the same time I would otherwise.
Anyway, Diana, yes, K-Stew.
So yeah, Spencer, this is the new film from Pablo Larraín, a Chilean director who most people would remember from Jackie, movie that came out in 2016. And that was most like English-speaking audiences' first introduction to Pablo Larraín, who previously had been directing in Chile for at least like 10 years or something. He's done some TV stuff. He'd done some features. But Jackie was his first English language film. And so by making Spencer as his follow-up, it kind of suggests that he's on a bit of a kick right now of making very zoomed in kind of introspective movies about powerful women or women who are in the halls of power because of a person they married and yet have all of the attention of the world on them and kind of inspecting how they deal with that pressure and the decisions they make.
Your Royal Highness.
Mummy!
Family are all gathered in the drawing room. They are waiting.
3 days. That's it.
Because Spencer is all about Diana, Princess of Wales. Specifically, it's zoomed in on the 3 days that she spends at the royal retreat of Sandringham House around Christmas time. And when the movie opens, the family is just arriving at this palace for this tradition that they have every year where they actually have to be weighed on a little scale in the entryway of the palace. And Diana is like putting it off. She really doesn't want to be there. Of course, this is in the early 90s, a couple of years before she dies. So she's got all the paparazzi following her constantly. The weight of the office that she holds and the position she has in the royal family has been weighing on her for a number of years. Her relationship with her husband, Prince Charles, is basically non-existent, you know, other than the fact that they're still married and they have 2 kids. They don't really speak at all. For the first, I would say, half hour of the movie, it's a 2-hour movie, you barely see any of the other royals at all. And so it kind of led me to think that like this movie was just going to be like basically in Diana's head for most of it. Later on, the other members of the royal family do slowly appear bit by bit, but most of the movie is kind of focused right on Kristen Stewart as Diana in her head, seeing sort of sometimes surreal scenes of like, things she's imagining, things that she would like, and really examining what being a part of the royal family has done to her.
So, I mean, is there any overlap with like the content of this with The Crown?
Maybe when the next season of The Crown comes out. I can't remember if there's a date for that yet. But because this is centered around these 3 days in the mid-90s, and when we last left the previous season of The Crown, we weren't up to that point yet.
Okay.
I think they were still somewhere in the 80s at that point, and Diana and Charles had been married for a couple of years, and I think William had been born.
But not Harry.
But not Harry. But at this point, William is like maybe 16, and Harry is like 10 or something. I'm not exactly sure on the exact date.
I haven't seen this, but from like the trailers and all the publicity and everything, it seems like this is very much a character-driven story, much like Jackie was. And so I get the sense that there's a lot of dialogue. There's also a lot of quiet moments.
Yeah, there's I would say it's probably kind of equally weighted each way. It definitely has a kind of a hardcore art house kind of vibe. It's one of those sorts of movies, this is less like The Crown in that it's not too focused with documenting things that are happening outside the royal family. This movie basically starts and stops at Sandringham House. It's as if the rest of the world doesn't exist. And yeah, a lot of scenes locked on Diana as she sort of wanders the empty halls, feeling very isolated. In fact, apparently in first big chunks of this shoot, it was just Pablo Larraín, the cinematographer, and Stu alone in this palace that they were using as the set. And they were just sort of wandering around, and Pablo Larraín was just shouting direction at her.
Very like a Terrence Malick thing, eh?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that brings us to the key question is Stu. How was she?
I mean, coming into this, I don't know how many of her post-Twilight movies you've seen. I am a Stu fan, just as I am a Robert Pattinson fan. I haven't watched a single Twilight film, but the work post-Twilight has been almost universally good, no matter what they decide to do. They've obviously had a few misfires in there. It's not like super perfect, but everything I've seen with them, I've liked. And obviously this is a bit of a challenge for Kristen Stewart because she's not English. She had to do the whole dialogue coaching and get the accent down. And I don't think she's going for a 100% perfect impersonation in the way that other actresses have tried.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
So, I mean, she has the English accent. It doesn't sound forced or anything like it. So there's nothing weird there. But it is recognizably Kristen Stewart. And that kind of like...
Yeah, she can't escape it.
Yeah. So it's got, you can feel like little bits of her kind of like California surferness coming through. But I think it works for Diana in an unexpected way because this is supposed to be Diana when she's kind of been tamped down by all of the stress that she's under and how depressed she feels. And I feel like Kristen Stewart's kind of detachedness just with her other roles kind of helps her with that. I think if we were seeing Diana like we do in The Crown, right when she first meets Prince Charles and when her personality is like allowed to kind of be out there and everything, I think maybe if Kristen Stewart was trying to cover Diana at that period of time, it might not have worked. But here it's just like she's so crunched down by everything. It does kind of come together.
That's a great point, actually, because kind of her detachedness kind of feeds into that like whole detached feel from Diana and the rest of the royal family. But you kind of mentioned it, is that Stu, in my opinion, has a hard time disappearing into certain roles. And it just might be like the sheer star power that she has. But every time I see her on the screen, my only thought is that is Stu. It's the way she looks at the camera or the way she looks at people. She does have kind of like the dead eyes going.
Yeah.
And which is why like I thought she was a really peculiar choice because Diana, no matter how sullen or depressed she looked, there was always like a sense that she was just this really joyous woman who had joy taken away from her. Whereas with Stu, sometimes it's just like, I think you were kind of born soulless.
Or just she's just so cool and laid back that nothing phases her,
I don't know if it's laid back. It's almost like aloof. Like she doesn't care. More ambivalence then like this is a struggle.
Right.
Like Diana.
Yeah, and but you can see how even if it is aloof, it still helps her, I think, at this particular time.
Yeah, for sure.
know?
For sure. So I remember watching Jackie and I thought Natalie Portman was pretty good. Little much, but I didn't like know about the historical figure that well. I didn't know the way she talked. But the film itself I found rather flat and boring. So talk about like the film itself. Was it any good?
Yeah, I mean it maybe it drags into certain places, like it's not going to be for everybody because it is so centered around that one performance in the way that Jackie was. But there are things that kind of bring it back up again. The score by Johnny Greenwood, who is a member of Radiohead and did the score for Phantom Thread. Very interesting. It's got bits of weird electronica. There's some jazz in there. There's some classical stuff when it calls for it. So there's always something interesting happening on the soundtrack to kind of fill things in, even if what's happening isn't super dramatic or if it's just Kristen Stewart kind of freaking out. You definitely, you come away from it incredibly sympathetic for Diana, which I think means the movie is succeeding at something.
Yeah.
You see how decisions that Charles makes about, giving his mistress and Diana the exact same pearl necklace as a Christmas gift is exactly what sets off another round of binge eating and purging, which is something that Diana struggled with because she was bulimic,
That happened in The Crown, didn't it?
It did, yeah. But you see it here and you're like, okay, you can kind of connect the dots and you're like, you can kind of figure, okay, yeah, this, what Diana is experiencing is very much diagnosable, I guess you could say.
Charles is such a dink.
Yeah. And there's an important scene where between the two of them, when it's probably the one time when Charles is on screen the most in the entire movie, and they're arguing in a billiards room about whether or not to let William go out and hunt with the rest of the men of the royal family. And Charles talks about how the thing that Diana has never understood is the need for members of the royal family to have two versions of themselves. There's the version that the public sees that's supposed to be perfect and, holding up that ideal of the royal family. And then there's themselves, the private person behind closed doors. And he argues that Diana never understood that and that she only wants her true self to be visible. And so when the expectations of the royal family come down on her, she can't separate those out. So that's her, and that's like, even though that's his opinion, you do end up seeing a bit of truth in it, and it kind of makes you question the whole institution of the royal family here and there. I mean,
it should be a question.
Yeah,
come on.
The movie works really well on that front. I mean, maybe the movie could deal with being a little bit shorter, because
it's already 2 hours though.
It runs 2 hours. I mean, maybe it could be an hour 45. It depends how much mileage you get out of the repetition of like the eating disorder scenes and the stalking through the palace and her arguing with the help. But the part of the movie that I didn't expect and that I actually probably liked the most was the scenes between Kristen Stewart and Sean Harris, who people will know from The Green Knight most recently, and also he's a villain in the Mission Impossible series. Sean Harris plays this meticulous palace chef he's one of the first characters we see on screen, actually, who's preparing all of the meals in the kitchen underneath Sandringham House over the course of the Christmas season. And he and Diana actually have a very close friendship, and they refer to each other by their first names. And he kind of acts as a bit of her counselor throughout the film. And she'll go down and talk to him, and, he'll try to advise her as best he can. And so those scenes were actually some of my favorites, not partially because I like Sean Harris as an actor, but it definitely laid out a lot of the things that the movie was trying to communicate about the main character.
Is the chef inspired by that chef on YouTube who said he used to cook for the Queen? You ever seen that series?
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Okay, so
no.
On YouTube, there's a English chef. I think he's English, and he cooks for the royal family, and he cooks the dishes that they like the most. And there's an episode where he talks about Diana, and like you get the feeling that they were pretty close because everyone used to treat him as just the chef.
Oh, okay.
But she treated him more as a person. So he was talking about how he got to know her, how she hung around the kitchen when no one else did, and William and Harry used to hang around as well.
Do you remember his name?
No, but just YouTube or Google the Queen Chef. He talks about, I think the Queen doesn't eat onions or garlic or something like that. Some like key ingredient where you're just like, wow, that is so Brit.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the Sean Harris plays a character named Darren.
Oh, okay. Then it is that chef then.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm pretty sure the chef on YouTube, his name is Darren.
Okay, but I think Sean Harris uses his like natural Scottish accent in this case.
Yeah, I don't know. He's European.
Oh.
I don't know if he's British or Scottish.
Okay.
But I mean, I just meant that, that chef character was inspired by someone real, not like a fictitious character to showcase Diana's like personality. You know, it's like sometimes biographical films do that where they invent someone.
Yeah, or
right?
they kind of combine a bunch of real people into a single person for the purposes of storytelling.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's cool to know that's based on reality then, because I had no knowledge going into it whether this guy was real or invented.
Well, I stumbled across him because I was looking up cooking videos. So.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Awards though?
Awards, definitely. I can see this going, like there are already people whispering about Kristen Stewart for Best Actress.
What about the film itself though? Like she will get attention, I believe that. But what about the film itself? Because I don't remember Jackie getting much attention.
Yeah, I could see this going in for cinematography, maybe for screenplay. I don't know about directing. I feel like there's a lot of contention in that category this year, so it may not make it all the way on that, but you know, it could be one of those awards contenders that's coming in with like 4 or 5 nominations, something like that. Okay. Stephen Knight did the script, so you know, he's been a consistent performer in the past. So yeah, I highly recommend it to people, especially if you have
especially if you don't mind K-Stew.
If you don't mind K-Stew, but if you have any kind of interest in the royal family, for sure. So especially if you're looking for a take on it that's different from what The Crown is doing, not in a bad way, but just in a different way.
And then you saw something else as well. I
did, yeah. This was a movie that I've sort of expected to have a bigger presence in movie theaters. But it is a black Western named The Harder They Fall from Jeymes Samuel is the director. Direct to Netflix, I think, or it had a brief run in theaters followed by a big launch on Netflix.
I know who you are. That love. The outlaw hunts down those who trespass against him with no mercy. Where is it?
Where is who?
Your boss.
My boss. Clearly, you don't know me.
Jeymes Samuel is actually the brother of the soul singer Seal.
Oh, interesting.
And I think this is his feature debut. But I guess he'd been working as a director and as a musician as well prior to releasing this. This is a movie that's like a straight up 2.5 hour Western with all of the usual trappings of the Western, other than the fact that almost the entire main cast is black. And you've got like just an absolute all-star lineup of people. Idris Elba, Lakeith Stanfield, Regina King, Jonathan Majors, Zazie Beetz, just like one standout person after another. And they're basically just kind of fulfilling the long history of black Western stuff like Buck and the Preacher, other stuff from the 50s and 60s. So it's got that kind of like very familiar Western structure of outlaws, gunslingers, an anti-hero who's not afraid to kill, but, you know, wants to kill for the right reasons. And it's just so stylishly done that you can't help but kind of get into it and keep watching, even though a lot of the plot pieces are very familiar. You know, you've got your big showdown at the end with sort of replicating bad guys, you know, just when you think you understand how many bad guys there are, there's more coming in, popping out on top of rooftops with their long guns, and then for the heroes to pick off with their pistols. You've got your classic showdowns of like the supporting characters from each gang pair off to take each other down so that the main character and the main villain can go head to head, matchups like that. But yeah, it's kind of something that I'm sorry didn't get more buzz when it came out.
So the reason I thought that this can get more buzz was because a lot of critics kind of said it's fine, but it's not very good. So like, what exactly are they talking about? Because it sounds like you really enjoyed it.
I would say like one of the people often talk about the fall of the Western, how the Western was one of the most popular genres. And then, around about the tail end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, it really fell out of fashion.
Right.
And maybe for good reason. I mean, they had been making a lot of Westerns at the time. They were pretty cheap and easy to churn out. But these days it feels like when we do get a Western, they tend to be pretty solidly made. There's, you hope that, they at least get a couple of good stars. And as a result, I mean, I still kind of like the genre. I think it comes along infrequently enough that when you do get one and it's got some people in it that you like, it's usually worth checking out. Mm-hmm. But I can see what the critics are saying too, where it isn't doing anything new with the format. The plot follows very familiar beats. Mm-hmm. So if that bores you at all, or if you get like an hour into it and you're feeling, oh yeah, I've seen this before, then yeah, maybe you're going to check out before the end of it.
I always feel like the Westerns don't really surprise you with like plot, complexity of plot. Where they do really get you is like the relationship between characters, the tough environment that they live in, and also just the violence in some of these Westerns. So, I mean, I've heard this got pretty bloody, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's I on like a scale of like 5 Tarantinos out of 5 Tarantinos. This is like maybe 4 Tarantino kind of thing.
Okay, so a lot of catch up.
Yeah, a lot of catch up. I mean, they do the effects really well. There's definitely some gorier moments, and there's a scene where like somebody gets shot through the head and brains go everywhere. There's definitely some people getting beaten to within an inch of their life.
Classic.
But I think the other thing that really pulls this movie up is just its sense of humor. It has like, there's this one sequence where the main character is Nat Love, who's a real life outlaw, mm-hmm. played by Jonathan Majors. He's sort of compelled to go rob a white town by the main villain, played by Idris Elba. And when they do arrive in this white town, Nat Love's gang discovers that the entire town is literally white. It's been like all the wood, all the streets, everything has been like whitewashed. So it's this unrealistically brilliant white. And then the title comes up, whatever it's called, Johnsonville or something. And then in a little subtitle, it's a white town. So that's like a little kind of glimpse of the tone of the humor in it. And the characters have a certain amount of banter going back and forth, within Nat Love's gang.
Right. Okay.
There are obviously some camaraderie. The characters fit into very familiar roles. You've got your sharpshooter with the long gun. You've got your young hotshot who's like a trick shooter. He's always spinning his pistols around his fingers, showing off. You've got the long-suffering girlfriend played by Zazie Beetz, who, she wants her guy to get out of the life of crime, hopefully. So you've got all of that, and then over in Idris Elba's gang, you've got his second in command, played by Regina King, who's like tough as nails and is obviously trying to overcompensate with violence because she's a woman. You've got Lakeith Stanfield as the kind of silent but deadly second in command.
So it almost sounds like a superhero film, eh?
Very much, yeah. And it almost feels like they kind of took some inspiration from superhero movies when they were making it. There's lots of pops of color. There's a scene between Zazie Beetz and Regina King where they're going toe to toe, and there's all these like huge reels of dyed fabric that are like all these different colors of the rainbow, kind of like fluttering in the wind as they fight. Uses of slow-mo, things like that. All of the costumes that the black characters wear are very vibrant and like dyed, and the colors really pop, whereas the costumes worn by white characters are very drab and drained of color. The music is really solid too. It very much reminds me of Peaky Blinders and the use of like anachronistic black music from more modern times laid into an obviously 19th century story.
That was one of the biggest reasons why I really loved The Knight's Tale. It's the first movie I really saw them do that.
Yeah, and I mean, Knight's Tale probably takes it further than The Harder They Fall, at least.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it does.
You know,
yeah.
because they're obviously in The Knight's Tale, they're doing stuff like, you know, We Will Rock You over the tournament. Yeah, it's being used for comedic effect. Here, it's more for like stylistic effect, but still kind of cool. I wouldn't say this is something that, you know, even though I say that I'm surprised it didn't have a theatrical run, it wouldn't have been something that I think I would have rushed out to see at the theater, because obviously it is kind of formulaic. But for something that, you know, you can pull up on Netflix whenever you want, I feel like it's better than, it's definitely in like the top 10% of stuff they've put out in the past couple of months.
Oh, okay. So that's actually a pretty high bar, because they've put out some pretty good stuff.
Wait, now you were saying a little while ago that they've been putting out garbage on Netflix.
Yeah, a lot of it, but there's still some really good stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
it's good in some of it's good in quality, but quantity wise, like the ratio is not great.
But yeah, that's The Harder They Fall. I mean, I feel like it's worth checking out if you're in the mood for a Western.
Netflix has gotten a lot of buzz about, you know, showing up big during award season this year. Because they're one of the few that have been like consistently releasing new stuff, because a lot of stuff in theaters has been delayed.
Right.
So if they were in contention this year, or should have been in contention, they've been pushed back for whatever reason. And this has kind of allowed the streaming services to really come in. But then the question again becomes, is the industry ready for, you know, the streaming wave to take over, you know, all their beloved award shows?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, this one is not going to be in awards contention. I highly doubt it. You know, at least you've got a movie that has a predominantly black cast in a genre that is historically been seen as being mostly white. Even though,
racist.
Yeah. Even though there is a tradition of black Westerns. Like I was saying, I mentioned Buck and the Preacher, which I watched a couple months ago with Sidney Poitier. But yeah, it's cool to just change it up a little bit and see a story from a different portion of the American West. So yeah, for those reasons, I would give it a thumbs up. But should we change gears and go over to Disney Plus and Hawkeye?
Sure. I feel like Hawkeye kind of shares some similarities with the Westerns.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
okay.
Just because it's kind of about a guy who's kind of alone, and you know, he fights guys with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, a little bit of an outmoded.
A bit of a surly main character, you know, kind of tough. And I can totally see Jeremy Renner in a Western. Actually, he was in a Western. He was in The Assassination of Jesse James.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a smaller role, but he was in it.
Yeah.
He just feels like someone from that type of film. But anyway, yes, the newest Marvel TV show on Disney Plus is Hawkeye.
When I wore this suit, I made a whole lot of enemies.
You're Hawkeye!
Who the hell are you?
Some people have actually called me the world's greatest archer.
Hawkeye is obviously played by Jeremy Renner in the Avengers. And this TV series takes place after all the events of Infinity War.
After Infinity War, but before Endgame?
After the whole thing, after Endgame as well.
Oh, okay.
So Black Widow has died. And he's kind of semi-retired, I would say. I think he's just sick of the superhero gig and he just wants to spend time with his family. And, you know, of course, Disney being Disney, this is sort of their big Christmas release. So the way they've scheduled the episodes and the storyline that's tied into it and the setting they're in, it all ties up to this whole like Christmas event that's going to happen later on. I'm sure it's going to be big.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a big Christmas theme around it, but Hawkeye is kind of down in the dumps. He's looking forward to spending time with his family. He doesn't really quite know what to do with his free time. But then this teenage girl pops into his life, played by Haley Steinfeld. She plays Kate Bishop. So in the comics, she becomes the next Hawkeye. And so through a bunch of, you know, coincidences and fortuitous events, they meet. And he kind of gets dragged into this conflict she has with this enemy called the Tracksuit Gang.
Okay.
And they are... Do you remember the boxers from Colin Farrell's crew in that movie, The Gentleman?
Oh, the Guy Ritchie film?
So they're exactly like that.
Okay.
Just the most hilarious brand of like caricature Russians who wear tracksuits, and they're just
but no Colin Farrell.
No Colin Farrell, yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But they're kind of like in that mold. They're like not very bright. They're there for comedic effect. They're kind of meant to be threatening and super violent, but they're very incompetent, so there's no threat at all. So it's kind of created this like really comedic tone, because I think 3 episodes in, we still haven't really met the big villain. We've met some minor villains, and we know there's someone bigger because they mentioned that there's something bigger. There's a bigger villain out there controlling the city and whatnot. And so it's up to Hawkeye and Kate Bishop to, 1, solve a murder that they've stumbled into, 2, fight the tracksuit gang, and 3, somehow tell the story of how Hawkeye passes the mantle on to Kate Bishop.
Ah, okay.
So Kate Bishop presumably would be one of the main characters in their new team, who, you know, with Spider-Man basically as the main character. So whatever this new generation is, post Iron Man, post Captain America, Kate Bishop is expected to be a part of it.
Okay. So do we get any of the more comic booky bits of Hawkeye's character, like, you know, trick arrows with like fists on them, or things like that?
Yeah, so there's an extended sequence where like Kate Bishop and Hawkeye are running away from gangsters, and Hawkeye's driving, so Kate Bishop's firing arrows, and she goes through his entire bag of arrows. And there's like ones that like explode, ones that like shoot sticky goo, there's ones that like has a USB thing attached at the end of it, which they joked about in previous movies. So there's all sorts of that. But I don't know. I feel like this is one of the weaker Marvel shows so far, because we're still not clear on what the conflict is and what kind of political statement it's trying to make. So WandaVision made a statement about like emotional depth and like, you know, overcoming grief. Winter Falcon, Soldier, whatever that series was, I can never say it right. They got all that political stuff in there, right?
Yeah. And like America's role in the wider world, and like the use of military force and that. Yeah. So there's a lot of social commentary there. Hawkeye seems more like a family-oriented series. It's kind of like the beginning episodes of WandaVision, where they're going like portraying the different sitcoms. There are definitely sitcom elements in Hawkeye, and just because the way Haley Steinfeld plays a character, she's always been this like really cheery, bright, sort of precocious girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That always seems to know better or is overconfident, and her personality is contrasted with Hawkeye, who's like super despondent, super depressed all the time.
Right.
And so you have that funny dynamic. It's not quite father-daughter, but it kind of is, because they're not biologically related.
Is it a little bit like Cobra Kai, in the sense of like a depressed kind of fighter type guy is being kind of brought back into the world by a cheery member of the younger generation?
But it's like reluctant though. Like, whereas in Cobra Kai, I can't remember the main character's name. Johnny's brought back, and he kind of finds joy again in karate, right? Right. Hawkeye is doing this begrudgingly. He makes a promise that he'll return home for Christmas Day to spend to his family. And I imagine that's what the finale will be. Him making it home on time.
Right.
You know, it has to, right?
Right.
And so you kind of already know the ending. You kind of know how it already ends, but it's just the in-between that's going to be interesting. But with the other previous series, you can never quite guess the ending. Especially with WandaVision and the Winter Soldier one.
And Loki, too.
And Loki, that's right. Loki, like, the ending was a bit of a twist. I don't know what the twist is going to be in this one. There's rumors that, you know, some of the Netflix Marvel characters, so like Kingpin, Daredevil, and, you know, Jessica Jones, they might make an appearance in this.
Oh, okay.
Just so they could tie in the universe. Because there had already been rumors that Matt Murdock from the Netflix series would be in the new Spider-Man movie.
Yes, yeah.
So there's that. I mean, the only character I hope they don't bring back is Iron Fist, because he's lame as hell.
Yes, agreed.
He's awful.
Yeah.
Everyone else can come back except for him.
I know Finn Jones is like, he thinks he did the world a favor with that series, but no.
I mean, kind of on a tangent, I feel like with all these like gender swaps and like this whole like affirmative action stuff going on, I feel like Iron Fist is ripe for a white character to be portrayed by an Asian person.
Yeah.
Like it would make so much more sense to me, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
But anyway, that's like a whole other thing, right? But I mean, if you're looking for something inoffensive, I think Hawkeye's like right up people's alley. It's definitely more family oriented. It's not very violent. Like the action scenes are more like Ant-Man style.
Right. And I mean, there's only so far they can go, with, you think about the action that Hawkeye's involved with in the Avengers movies. He's usually shooting his arrows at like alien type characters who you don't really see them like get shot through the head or get an arrow in the heart or any kind of like mortal injury. You know it's happening because he's fighting them, but it's not, you're not really forced to kind of come to terms with his brand of fighting. And I feel like if you're going to do that in a show, you do have to kind of family friendly it a bit, because otherwise,
like he has lethal weapons that he can't use in lethal ways.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how you keep.
Yeah, and you contrast that with like, WandaVision, where she can do like an energy blast that, sends somebody flying but doesn't kill them, things like that. So they're obviously they've thought a little bit about that. And I guess that helps too, because people have often made a punchline out of Hawkeye, the sense that he is the
I still think he's a lame character, but
yeah. He's, and as a result, this was definitely on my list of like Disney Plus shows that I was going to skip because,
that's the really interesting thing. I came into the show with the exact same mindset as you. I only watched it because I think Haley Steinfeld is a really funny actress, and I felt that she could have brought something new into this.
Okay.
But, Hawkeye being lame, being underappreciated, well, not underappreciated, but like appreciated at the right level.
Yeah, okay.
Where he's not in the upper tier, even though he's one of the original guys. Even compared to Black Widow, I think he's a really lame character. But it really ties into the plot in this show, because part of it is Hawkeye trying to come to terms with the fact that, yes, he saved the world, but at the end of the day, his life seems less fulfilling, less fun, because he's lost so much. So he's dealing with sort of like a post-retirement crisis, if you will. Like he's not quite sure what to make of his legacy. He's not quite sure what to make of his actions, because at some point he did do evil things, right? Like he was brainwashed, but it was him doing all the bad stuff.
When you mean
with the time stone, right?
Oh yeah, the first Avengers movie.
Yeah, and like clearly the death of Black Widow still weighs on him, because he was the one who wanted to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
And so even like Disney has done a really good job of doing this, is addressing some of the criticisms that as we see from the outside. So one of the in-jokes is that Haley Steinfeld is a big fan of Hawkeye, but she's constantly trying to tell him or ask him to market himself a bit more, because he's so like in the shadows and so underappreciated. So she's always like, your problem is branding, Hawkeye.
Okay.
No one likes you because your brand sucks. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it's really funny, but just Jeremy Renner is really good at playing really depressed, despondent characters. So watching him kind of mope around is kind of satisfying.
Tell me that they reference the whole Jeremy Renner app situation.
I don't think they did, but they did mention like an app of some sort.
I really hope they do, because I feel like that would be a huge missed opportunity. I mean, for that reason alone, like if they worked in Hawkeye having his own app where it was just his fans on an app, I would watch that episode just for that, because
there is an app that Kate Bishop uses to track Hawkeye. So I'm not quite sure if
it's got to be
maybe slight reference to that, but I mean maybe that's too embarrassing for Renner. I feel like that's too much.
Maybe I because to this day I don't really fully believe that Jeremy Renner was all that involved with the app. He was just he signed on a dotted line and they put his image all over this app, and then
I'm sure that's what happened.
Charge the money to all of these fans to buy their little stars to like his posts, and it was.
But at the same time, he clearly was looking to make a quick buck.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's all he was thinking about, right?
But I feel I wonder, how much personal humiliation he feels from the thing being such a debacle.
I think playing Hawkeye is already humiliation enough, is it not?
Very possibly, yeah.
Like it's funny, but kind of like the most unbelievable part of the show is that Hawkeye actually has fans. That's like the most unbelievable part of the show.
Right. Because other than people kind of saying that they like Hawkeye ironically as a joke online, you don't have to hear a lot of like, earnest support for him amongst MCU fans. So I mean, I see what you're saying about the show. I still don't think I'm going to catch up on it.
Well, let me finish it and I'll let you
Okay.
know.
Okay. Maybe it'll be like a Christmas Miracle or something. They'll have this very moving finale episode that'll just make it all worthwhile.
Okay, so why don't you want to watch the shows again?
Because there's too many of them. I'm like, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm like, I have so...
But they're good shows.
True, yeah. But like, I'm like, if I tried to keep up on just like the Disney shows on their own, like both Marvel and Star Wars, I would never watch anything else. And they want that.
That's the whole idea.
They want that, obviously. So, I mean, I would miss out on Succession. I would miss out on the stuff I'm watching on Netflix, all those things. And so, I'm just like, I'm making very kind of like calculated choices on which ones to watch. And so obviously like WandaVision and Loki tick the boxes for me, but then I've skipped Captain Falcon and this one. And how many others are currently running?
That's it.
Okay, but there's going to be more. Obviously, there's going to be at least five or six more in the not too distant future, like Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk and Moon Knight.
But that's kind of like the route everyone's going, eh? Like, I think HBO Max just announced that there's going to be a Penguin spinoff for Colin Farrell.
Yes,
and so like
from the Batman.
This is a way for all these companies to make big movies and then spin off the minor characters that deserve their own story but aren't really good enough to get their own movies, their own TV show.
Right. So then, like, for example, with the Colin Farrell thing, like, I might watch that, but it's not guaranteed because...
How can you turn down Colin Farrell? I'll watch anything that guy's in.
I mean, I will, but I mean, if there's no, like, good show around his performance, then it's going to lose out to some other show that I need time in my life for,
right, Fine, I guess.
Yeah. They gotta be good shows on their own. They can't coast on being connected to some property. I
feel like anytime Colin Farrell's on a screen playing like a character, like a character, it's like must watch TV.
Most of the time I would be with you, but I need to see the Batman first. Obviously, that's.
Yes, that has to come first for sure.
So, okay, well, that does it for Hawkeye. So we're giving thumbs up to, sort of cautious thumbs up to House of Gucci.
Okay, this was the same deal with Last Duo. Or the Final Duo. Is it Last Duo or Final Duo?
Last Duo.
The Last Duo. Oh my god, I'm getting
sorry, Sir Ridley.
Yeah, the Last Duel. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I'd say yes, thumbs up if you had me. If I had to pick, I think it's worth watching just for the acting.
And yeah, thumbs up for me on Spencer. Although obviously very art housey, so your mileage may vary. Thumbs up 2 on Harder They Fall. Not as good as Spencer. Definitely formulaic, but if you're in the mood for a Western and you want to see some of these really cool actors having a lot of fun, it's worth it. And then, again, another cautious sort of in progress thumbs up.
Yeah, in progress thumbs up. That's fair, because it hasn't finished yet, and I'm sure there's bigger things to come.
And then coming up on the next episode of the podcast, we'll probably be talking about a full-blown Marvel movie. Again.
Can't escape it.
Yeah, second time in 3 episodes. So that will be Spider-Man No Way Home. And December is always packed with stuff. So there's going to be other stuff we're talking about in that episode as well. The big Christmassy release type things, the ones that are really...
Well, the DiCaprio film.
The DiCaprio film, Don't Look Up. Yeah, that's a strong contender. So we may be talking about that. The other ones kind of escape me right now. But yeah, another jam-packed episode coming down the pipe.
Whatever. You guys are going to listen to whatever the hell we feel like talking about.
Exactly. You're in our hands. Yeah, but until that, next episode, my name is Robert Snow in Toronto.
And my name is Jason Chen in Vancouver. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
The Extra Buttery podcast is written, recorded, and produced by Jason Chen and Robert Snow. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to rate and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. And remember, popcorn is always better with extra butter.